Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode here at Aire Farms. Today I am talking about a really good topic, and the topic is how to start a profitable farm with little capital. We chose to invest less in non-income producing activities and invest more in income producing activities. So some of the non-income producing activities were infrastructures, which means that we need to invest less in the infrastructure. Infrastructure includes our structures here, our pens. I chose to go with the ground structures as opposed to raised structures. By so doing, I was able to spend maybe a third of what I would have spent on my structures. Camera guy, let's show them around. Let's show them the structures, the simplicity. This right here is the exercising yard. The goats go out, eat, come back, relax in the afternoon. Right now it's afternoon. They're from grazing. They went out in the morning for their morning grazing. They're back, they are relaxing. They had some water. Then this section is the spraying yard. You know, very simple. This right here is the spraying yard. And then we'll go ahead and show them the actual structure, the shed. You can show them from up, showing the roof coming down, so that we can see the simplicity in these structures. If it rains, these goats will come in here. They'll still be under the shade, they'll still be under shelter, they won't get wet. It's still functional without spending a lot of money on it. The only thing we raised on our structures is the goat pen. Maybe I should go in and show it clearly. Excuse me, I have a bit of an irritation in my throat. So the only thing we raised here was the kids pen, the kids section. And the reason we raised this is because we want to make sure that the kids get, we create a warm environment for them, because for them, they are more susceptible to pneumonia. Coldness affects them. And remember, the goal in goat farming is to make sure that you avoid kid mortality as much as possible. Cameraman, just climb up here and show how we insulate the kids' pen. So every day we put that grass and we take it out, dry it out, clean it and bring it back to create a good warm environment for our kids, as one of the practices that contributes towards limiting kid mortality and hence contributing towards the profitability of the farm. So this is the structure. We spent maybe a third of what we should have spent on a normal raised structure. Additionally, get in the habit of utilizing locally available materials. All this timber you see, I was lucky that my land came with a lot of trees, and I was able to identify some. I would kind of choose and pick, see maybe a tree that has two big branches. I would cut one branch. Some of them were old trees that needed to go. So we would cut the entire tree, but all the timber that I used came from my farm. We cut trees and turned it into timber. That is how, I felt bad cutting the trees, but at the end of the day, someone else was going to cut the trees and I was going to pay maybe 5 times the cost for the timber. So it's good to identify what you have and start with what you have and then build onto the rest. Spend money on areas that you absolutely have no option but to spend money on. But if there are areas where you can cut the cost by using what is locally available, please use that. The other thing I spent less money on was fencing the land. When I chose to fence the land, I used locally available material. Of course, some of the timber to make the poles. I'll show you guys this fencing system that I have. This plant right here, it's called orukoni in Uganda, right? And orange in Nyankole. So the only thing I had to spend money on was the barbed wire and labor. Remember, the trees, the poles are coming from our trees. Like I showed you, I did my best not to completely destroy the trees on the land. So I would identify trees that have multiple branches and then would cut off some of the branches and still leave the tree to thrive. So that is how you minimize the setup cost, so that you invest in things that are going to contribute towards the profitability of your farm. Now, what do we need to spend money on? We need to spend money on good and superior breeds. I spent money on boas and savannas, which were very expensive. They were twice the cost of what I could have spent on our local mubende. But the advantages are enormous. One, quick reach of maturity age. That means I'm able to get my return on investment in a shortest time possible as compared to the local breeds. Two, if given good feeding, I've realized that these goats also have a high tendency to get multiple offsprings, get twins, triplets. So that directly contributes towards the profitability of your business. Then also you want to make sure that you're investing in big numbers to make economic sense. And those big numbers help you. For instance, if I'd spent 30 million on building structures, that means I would have not been able to start with 100 goats. Maybe I would have started with 50 goats. But because I spent less on structures and more on the breeds, on the numbers, I was able to quickly multiply. Because if you start with 100, I started with 100, I added 150, I kept adding. I didn't stock all at once, but because I didn't spend a lot of money on infrastructure, I had the room to invest in large numbers. And remember, when you're in business, economies of scale make a big difference. You want to make sure that if I start with 100 goats, that means in a year I'll have 100 goats. I have 100 or 200 offsprings to sell off or to reinvest into the business. So let us embrace the viewpoint of looking at what we have and capitalizing on the already available materials when we are doing the setup, so that we spend less on the setup and spend more on stocking, which is ultimately going to give us more profits. Another point to consider, this may not be a direct monetary benefit, but it can save or break. And this is doing your research. You have to make sure that before you venture into farming, before you venture into goat farming, you have done your research upside down. I spent maybe 2 years researching this project, and even with all that research, I still made some mistakes. But just imagine I hadn't made the research that I carried out. It means that I could have made bigger mistakes that would have cost me so much money. And remember, every amount of money you lose, it is eating into your profits, into your future profits. So let's get in the habit of researching. I contacted so many farmers that were into goat farming, I talked, I emailed, I called, I spent 2 years trying. I experimented before I actually went all in. I experimented with my cousin in Mbarara, and I bought some goats, put on his farm, and we did more of kind of like a partnership. But for me, I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn before I carry my little hard-earned money and pouring into a project that I have no clue how I have no clue of its ins and outs. So I encourage you to be very intentional about researching, doing extensive research before you choose to invest. And by so doing, you'll be able to spend less, but create a profitable farm. The other factor that can seriously contribute towards the profitability of your farm while spending less is you're going to spend a bit of money in the beginning, but it's going to save you so much money, and that is on training your workers. Identify a farm that is doing exactly what you want to do. Identify your workers, the guys you want to work with, send them to that farm for practical training so that they can understand how to take care of these animals. I've been talking about over and over again how my teammates are able to identify a sick animal. They're able to know this is the illness. They're able to know to go into our first aid kit to identify what medication is appropriate for this particular situation. And that has saved me so much money. Do you know how much it costs every time you have an issue at the farm to call a vet to come onto your farm? There was a time we had to call the DVO, and they charge 3,000 shillings in our area, 3,000 shillings per animal. So just think about it. If you had 100 animals that were sick that day, and they're charging you 3,000 shillings per animal, how much money would you spend in just one day? But if you equip your workers with those skills, give them the training to identify the illnesses, to know what treatment to administer, then you're saving so much, hence increasing on the profitability of your farm. Another factor would be identifying affordable land. We have to remember that sometimes we want to be close to Kampala. We want to be close to the big city, wherever we are, Nairobi, wherever. But remember that land that is close to those cities is very expensive. Let's use an example here in Uganda. If you want to buy land in Wakiso Mpigi, maybe an acre is going to be about 15 million. When we acquired this land here in Kayunga, deep in Kayunga, out of civilization, you may want to call it, but it saved me so much money. An acre at that point was at 3.5 million Ugandan shillings. That at this point, I think that's less than 1,000 per acre. So if I had spent 15 million on an acre, I would have gotten maybe 10 to 20 acres for the amount of land that I have, that I ended up acquiring. So let us also set our mindsets and be okay with getting out of town, because these ventures, you don't need to be so close to town for you to carry out a successful farm, to have a successful and profitable farm. There are other means that you can put in place to get your product to the market, which will not cost you as much as or hinder you on the progress and growth of the business, as opposed to getting so much money and investing it in land, and then what? You don't have money to invest in stock. What's the land going to do? Pretty much nothing. So those are just a few of the points that I've come up with. Just know this is a broad topic, and as we go along, I'll think of more and I'll come back and share. The more we learn, the more we share, and we all grow together, and the goal is to create an economy that is so prosperous, and it's going to be streaming from agriculture. All the best. See you next time.